Welcome, everyone. This is the Abundant Investor Podcast, and we are Beth and Christine, your hosts. We are here to show you how you can live your rich life right now with the power of an abundance mindset and tools the wealthy have used for years that are accessible to the rest of us. Things like real estate investing and using the powerful benefits of life insurance. We're so glad you're here. Now let's dive in.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Abundant Investor. We're Beth and Christine. We're so happy to be here.
Today, we're going to be talking about the 50s decade. We call this the diploma decade because so many people in their 50s have college graduates, high school graduates. They're thinking about launching their kids, and that really opens the door for them to be thinking about the next phase of their life, which is
so exciting.
Really fun. Yeah. We're both there a little bit.
Yes.
We're both going through that period a little bit, and we know so many people that are as well. And it does bring a lot of thoughts and changes to the forefront.
Yeah, exactly. It's an exciting time. It's fun. I find myself reflecting a lot back as to when I first got out of college and like what decisions did I make that I was glad that I made around investing in my career and all that kind of, getting married and all that kind of stuff. And, thinking about the lessons that I'm trying to teach my grown children.
Exactly.
And then, having a lot of conversation right now with my peers in this group saying, all right, so what's next for us?
Yeah.
What are our hobbies and dreams and all that kind of great stuff? So we're going to jump into all of that. But before we start, I think a really good thing to do, Christine, would be maybe to talk a little bit about sort of our thoughts around your mindset in this, the whole topic around money and really living a rich life.
Exactly. And I'll tie that into our, the core, one of our core messages, because we're trying to tie those in at the beginning of every episode. We believe in abundance, and we believe that abundance is a choice in mindset. So we can choose to see the world through a lens of abundance. We can choose to see it through scarcity. We're going to talk a little bit today about the status quo and how you always have a choice. You can just go with the flow of what you see happening around you, or you can be deliberate about your thinking. And one of the things about abundance mindset, I think, is it's important to question everyday beliefs. I think there's it's not as common for people to have an abundance mindset because there's a lot of things that are perpetuated by society, the media, that are around scarcity. And so it's really easy to fall into the trap, I'll call it, of seeing scarcity everywhere. There's not enough money. There's a lot of danger in the world. There's not enough safety, right? And yet if we look outside into nature, there's so much abundance everywhere. And there's so much abundance we have the world at our fingertips,
right?
If we want to. So what does that mean? And why do we care so much about this? Because the mindset that you have, the view that you have on the world, your beliefs and your values is going to shape the way that you look at the world. It's going to change the way you look at opportunities and how many opportunities you see. It's going to impact your entire life, really.
Right.
So stopping to think about that and how much it matters and the way that you want to see the world is so important, especially in this reflective phase. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think of the quote, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And, if you're just going through status quo with your finances and you're apathetic and you're not, really like questioning why did we make these decisions or what decisions, what's ahead of us where we can really impact the decision, it's going to spill over to all parts of your life, right? So we're all about having an abundant mindset around your finances, but about living your life to its fullest because life is meant to be enjoyed and not just financially, everywhere with your relationships and your belief systems and what you're doing recreationally and for your career and everything that you do. It's meant, we're put on this earth to enjoy life, not to be, not to struggle through life.
Right. Yeah. And I think we forget that sometimes.
Yeah.
And when we are in that mindset, when you and I are in that mindset, we are on fire, right? We see all the opportunities. We see tons of potential to be of impact, to be of influence in a really positive way. And it's the fire that motivates us. And
absolutely.
Hopefully you have that. You felt that before. You can find it again. We want you to know you can find that again. And you can feel that in regard to your finances, and you can feel in control, and that you really can create your destiny. If you can see it, you can have it.
You got it.
And so that's the frame that we want to put on this decade, but also in general, it's one of our, it's one of our core statements around how we run our business.
Absolutely. And I think when you think about, so the opposite of that, I think is kind of conformity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the previous decades, we talked about you're so busy when you're in the thick of it in your 30s and 40s. You're in the thick of your career. You come home, you have young children that you have to take care of. You physically have to pick them up and feed them and all this kind of stuff. And you're really in the thick of it. You don't necessarily get the chance to challenge the status quo or anything. So when you're saving for retirement, the easiest thing to do is just sign up for that 401k and never think about it.
Right.
And, somebody said, you're driving in the car, you hear commercials. Oh, you're going to save for college, save in a 529 plan. Go to xyz.com. You go to xyz.com and it's done.
Right.
And so it's not out of lack of caring, I think. It's out of lack of time and energy and sort of mental capacity to think about it.
Yeah.
And hopefully in your 50s, you start to get that time and energy and opportunity to really, reflect a little bit about what's important to you and what's your purpose and all that kind of stuff. And part of that is saying, okay, so where is all my money?
Yeah.
How much do we have? Where have we tucked it away?
Mm-hmm.
And what's our strategy for the next 40 years?
Right.
Maybe,
Right.
It's a long time.
Yeah. And it starts to change. If you have been saving all this time, you want to start to think about the distributions and you've done the accumulations. And now how's it coming back to you? And what does that mean? And I know for us, for me personally, it's not something I have really spent a lot of time thinking about until diving into this work and realizing, it's really important to be thinking about tax implications around our country and our government and what's happening there. So I can plan, because the money that I maybe thought was going to be there for Social Security may not be, right? So we're here to share more insights on that. And I think also, there's let's address the fact that some people have financial advisors and some people don't. And I think there's a lot of, misconceptions around what a financial advisor does, or do I need one or not, and how to manage our own money. And I think whether or not you've been using a financial advisor, managing your money actively or not, it's a really good time to step back and to think about it really objectively and think even back up from the financial advisor's point of view and look at the holistic point of view, because a lot of times financial advisors are not thinking about all of your assets, like your real estate, life insurance, things like that. So you want to really think what's the big picture right now? Where do I stand? It's so important to know what, take inventory. What do I have? And then where do I want to go? And we want to share with you some options as well of ways to get there. So not only the mindset, but the practical tools on how to get to what your dreams are.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think maybe for the purposes of our conversation today, let's break it into two separate topics. Let's talk about where are your assets and what could you do with those assets? And then let's talk about the buckets that they fall into. So when I say where are your assets, I'm like what you were just saying, Christine. So think about, for example, your primary residence. The real estate market across the country has had a massive increase in value over the last 5-10 years, right? We're, as a country, facing a lack of inventory. The real estate prices go up. It's just the law of supply and demand. When supply is down, demand is up, the prices are going to have to go up. So you are probably sitting in your primary residence on a great deal of equity. So what do you want to do with that equity? So that's a question that we will spend some time with you on, because there's some really cool things you can do. Like, Christine, why don't you tell them what you did with the equity in your home?
Yeah. We had moved a few times and we came to realize the amount of equity that we had in our property several years ago. And at the same time, I got really clear on what my vision was. And the thing that kept coming up for me was to have a house at the beach. And I didn't know exactly how this was going to happen because I hadn't said I have a savings fund or I have enough in savings to fund the down payment for that house. What I did have, though, I had already taken out a home equity line of credit because I thought I might use it for some type of renovation or something later down the line. And that was good foresight, subconscious foresight that I didn't even know I needed it for. And I used that equity in my house to put a down payment on a property at the beach. So I bought a second property and I used some of those funds to also renovate it. And voila, that's the, that's the beginning of that. And it was the beginning of a lot of things because it helped me to realize there are different ways to fund real estate investments, which we have a lot of clients who are interested in real estate investing. And that's one of some, several strategies that we talk about. And that house has built a lot of equity. And actually I could take equity out of that property for other properties. So it's really powerful. And it's not something that I think certainly not your HR benefits person is going to suggest to you, which is where I think a lot of us get our initial information about how to plan financially. And it's not something your financial planner is necessarily going to have on their radar. I'm not saying that they won't, but I know that not all of them do.
Right. They're thinking about, I think, in many cases, how do I take your investable assets and, if the guy down the street can get 8%, I can get you 9, and it's a different kind of mindset than saying, okay, let's look at you holistically. Let's look at everything to make you have a rich life, you know? Where are your assets? What can you do? What's important to you? What do you want to do with your time and your energy and all of that kind of thing? And for us, we love real estate. So real estate investing becomes part of a career. And then, it's the lines blur a little bit, which is really kind of cool. So we start with that. We start looking at really as a wealth strategist, your whole wealth picture. But then kind of tactically, I think it's important to think about these 3 buckets. And those buckets are your taxable assets, those things like your checking, savings, maybe your brokerage account, your tax-deferred assets where most people have most of their money, like their 401k, and then their tax-free assets. And I just want to talk for a second about the tax-deferred bucket, because back to what I was saying at the beginning, what we've been talking about is sort of like, we just, without putting a lot of thought to it, have built up many Americans have done this, built up this huge bucket of tax deferred assets that someday we have to pay Uncle Sam on. And we have to think about, how do we withdraw from that? How do we get distributions? We've been in this accumulation phase. Now we really need a strategy for distributing that money. And we have to be very aware of the fact that we're going to have to pay taxes. Those taxes in the amount that we come out will affect our Social Security. And then you have even above that, the layer of, we're sitting on $32 trillion in debt in this country. And for, when Social Security started, I think there was 48-1 workers for people that are getting payment. That's down to 3, and it's predicted to be a 2-to-1 ratio by the time this generation starts to draw the Social Security. So we're in a crossroads, really. We're in a crossroads, and so that leads us to that last bucket, and that's the tax-free bucket. I think most people think there's only one way to build that up, and that's the Roth IRA, which is a great way to build it up, but you have limits. Right. You can only put $6,500 into it. And if you're a married couple making more than $189, you can't even qualify for it. So it's in theory a great idea, but in practicality, there's not a lot of room in that bucket. It's more like a ladle than a bucket. Right.
And it's not accessible to everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's where the concept of life insurance comes in. And I don't think that in general, people realize that life insurance is really an amazing place to store money that can grow tax deferred and be accessible to you tax free whenever you want, regardless of your age or what reason you're using it. Right. And then back to that tax deferred bucket, if you're that person we just described, it's not too late. We can help you come up with a distribution plan. There's a lot of tools and resources that we have available to help you to do that. So.
Absolutely. So I think that one of our assets is being able to sit down with people who are in their 50s, maybe even 60s, I'll say, and really get into thinking about the distributions,
Right.
right? And thinking about their current asset, like where are their assets right now? Maybe they're putting money into a 401k very diligently to save up for retirement. And I think what we learn from people, the more we have conversations around this, is because where are we getting our information from, right? There's no handbook. There's no teacher that's regularly telling us about this. People generally don't really understand what the distribution taxes look like. They don't understand how it impacts their income. And a lot of people don't realize that our tax rates right now are relatively low compared to 100-year history.
Right.
So it is probable, I would say it's likely, that taxes will go up. So what does that mean? That means your dollars, your hard-earned dollars that you've put into qualified plans are going to get taxed at an even higher rate. Very likely, very probable that will happen. And it's one of those things you have no control over. So one of the reasons why we do like this properly structured whole life insurance is that you can not only have to wait for later to access it, you can access it anytime, but you have a greater sense of what is available. It won't be taxed. And there's so many advantages to it. And I think, sometimes people think we put it in a box. And really, a lot of what we're here to do is show people how, it's so different from what you might have heard about it. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there around the limitations, or that it's just misconceptions around so many things about it, that it's a scam. It's benefits the agents and not the recipients of it. And we're so focused on making this a really positive experience for people. And I know that our interest is in the higher good for all.
Right. And there is, Christine, I have to say so there is a general belief that life insurance is good for the agent and not for the insured. And there's some truth to that, to be honest, in that if it's not structured properly, you're not getting the benefit. And basically, I'll just say very simply what that means is when we structure a policy, what we do is actually reduce the death benefit to the lowest amount possible to satisfy the IRS that it gets all that great tax benefit, and create as much cash value as possible to be able to access that tax-free. And we're compensated on that first part of it, not the second part. Right. And so I think that it's been, practiced likely in the past for other agents to flip that on its head and take the bigger piece of the pie, which is, create a big death benefit and a little bit of cash value, because that's where they're getting compensated. And so we bring this up not to put anybody down in the industry or anything like that, but to be transparent and to let people know how things work. Because how the heck do you know how they work unless someone tells you? Yeah. And so we want to be an open book. We want to be transparent. And I think how we're compensated and how these policies are structured and who it benefits is a great example of us being transparent and why it's important, and to get over any negativity, because it really is a powerful tool, especially when you're in a position like Christine, you were just talking about, where we're sitting on mostly tax assets that are going to be taxed, and in an environment we're gonna see taxes go up. Right. This is just it's gonna have to happen for us to continue. So, but I think it would be kind of fun to sort of end where we started, because I think part of the conversation is, oh my gosh, how are we gonna distribute these funds? But I think the better conversation is, what do you want to do with the funds? Like, what is it that you want to do? Do you want to retire? Do you want to come up with a second career? Do you want to invest in real estate? Right. Do you want to become the best pickleball player in the state of Massachusetts? What do you want to do? Right. We've heard of people going back to, teaching as a second career, or getting involved in universities. I mean, there's so much. And we want to give you permission to dream big and to open that conversation. And speaking of abundance, I just want to say, when you're at this point in your life, and really, if you're younger and you're listening to this, it's true for you too. It's even more true if you're in your 50s, though. You have an abundance of skills and life experience to bring to others. And
let's face it, I say this in coaching all the time, we're all here to serve others. So whatever you're doing in your work, it's in service to others. So how do you want to serve? What skills and experience and resources are you bringing to the table? Because you're abundant and full of them. Which of those do you want to share with the world and get compensated from? Or maybe you want to volunteer. That's fine too. Both are options to you. And so are all the other things that you get to do if you want to. And listen, we don't want you to say, oh, I really always wanted to buy a boat or yacht, but I just, that would be a dream, but I could never have that. We want to have the conversation with you. We want to know what the dreams are that you're not sharing, because we want to show you how you can do it. Right? Like I was sitting with a friend talking about, yes, you can have this thing that you want, right? And like, here's a way that you can do it that you probably haven't thought of. And start learning, because it's going to take a little bit of time to get your nervous system like acclimated to the fact of like, oh, there's a new way to think about this, and I've got to get comfortable with it. And it's 100% possible. So
absolutely,
it can be such an exciting time for that reason. And there's, like you were saying too, it's like a time when we have more time. There's more of an abundance of time now, because the kids, if you've had kids, are out of the house, and hopefully you've learned to delegate things and you have support in your life so that you do have more free time. I mean, time is the ultimate currency.
Yeah. And we're going to create the space and time and place for you to work on that vision and talk about those dreams. And we invite you to bring your partner in life into that conversation and really, have some fun about it. A few episodes ago, we talked about when you're in your 30s and you kind of have to have those hard conversations as a couple to say, okay, what if something happens? Like you have to put those processes in place. This is the same idea, but even better. You get to come together and say, okay, we did all those things. Now, how do we want to reap the rewards of the money that we've saved and the friendships we've made or the skills we've made over the years? And we want that conversation to be really a positive one. Yeah. And
should be juicy.
Yeah, exactly. Should be fun. Exactly. So we've had some fun. It's been fun to have to hear what people have to say. And that's part of what we offer, is creating that space to allow you to dream big.
Yes. So want to dream big?
Yes.
Let's just sit together and we'll give you the tools to start really getting honest with yourself about what you want.
That's great.
And, so, we can do the financial plan too. We can introduce you to products. We can do it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So how can people get in touch with us? Well, you can go to our website, theabundantinvestor.com. You can follow us on social media.
Yep.
In all of our social media channels, we have in our bio a link to set up a consultation call.
That's right.
It's complimentary. So it's a great way to just get the ball rolling.
Sign up today.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Abundant Investor Podcast and learned something new. We would love to hear from you. And if you did get something from this episode, please subscribe and rate this podcast so more people can find it and live their rich lives too. And remember, an abundant mindset means there's always plenty to go around, and through giving, we receive.